Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the newest installment. That's Robert Meyer Burnett, and that's me. That's John Campea. The newest installment here, the latest edition, hot off the presses. It is the Weekly Hero, the show where we talk about and focus in on the things going on in the world of comic book movies, a little bit of comic book television, stuff like that. We just go back and reflect on some of the biggest issues and stories that we had that day. And of course, as you already saw him, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett is here as well. Robert, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, John. You know, I was just contacted by my own counterpart in the multiverse. I was talking to him, and then suddenly his Earth was destroyed. Should I be worried?
Oh, that's unfortunate. That's a terrible thing going on in the...
I think there's a crisis coming, John.
There could be... You know what? It's not one of our major topics here today, but let me throw in one thing here quick. So I'm caught up on what's been going on in Flash. I haven't watched the latest episode of Arrow yet, so I'm just one step behind on that. But I'm caught up on the latest episode of Flash. Can I tell you I'm a little bit worried? Because the last few episodes of Flash in particular, I understand we've got this big crossover, the Crisis crossover event coming. I understand that. But and did you see the newest episode of Flash?
Yes.
With Elongated Man?
Yes.
Yet another completely useless filler episode. I mean, that's two in a row. And I get it. I'm excited for the crossover event, but at the expense of the crossover event is that we get a bunch of meaningless episodes. Like a couple of minor things happen. It's like, oh, okay, Nash had a nice little moment with the girl. Okay, that's sweet. And oh, look, not Lucille, Cecile. So, yeah. Cecile had a nice little breakthrough moment. Oh, a little James Bond homage, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool. But I feel like it's 2 weeks in a row that this whole thing has just kind of been, I don't know, a bit of a waste. Well,
they got to save money.
I guess so. I guess that's it, but I don't think
they got to pay Tom Welling.
I don't think this was a particularly cheap episode to make, was it?
No. There's visual effects in it, and probably not. But yeah, I do. It has not been exactly scintillating television the last 2 weeks. But I've got a question for you.
Okay. Yes.
In the comics, in Crisis on Infinite Earths, the point of it was to streamline the DC universe.
Right.
And they got rid of the multiverse, and they brought everybody onto one Earth.
Right.
Do you think they're going to do that?
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, right, okay, look, the nice thing about it is that there's a load of potential and a load of possibilities that they could do. I'm just at this point, I just don't feel like I'm in a position to guess. Do you have any theories about it?
Well, I don't. I mean, I'm only going by, in Crisis on Infinite Earths, significant things happened. That was the one thing.
Right.
But also, Flash died.
Well, which is something they keep alluding to that could be happening, right?
I know. I mean, well, died is obviously a relative term, but things change. I mean, Supergirl died, Flash died, and I'm like, are they going to do that?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, look, this is Arrow's last season. It is not the Flash's last season, so I'm figuring they're going to figure out a way to fix this. The Flash must die problem. I think they're going to finish. It
would be really cool if they killed Supergirl, and the next week the show was called Superman and Lois Lane.
Don't do that to me, Rob. Don't give me hope. Don't give me hope. Oh my God, how glorious would that be?
I mean, you got to recreate the cover of Crisis 7 when Superman's holding up the dead Supergirl. Coming next week on Superman and Lois Lane. And I'm not going to lie, you just gave me a little bit of a boner just thinking about that. That's awesome. Anyway, hey, listen, guys, we do have a bunch of topics here that we're going to talk about here today. We're going to revisit and talk about these comments that Henry Cavill made the other day about, he says he's not giving up on being Superman. Really, what does that mean, or does it not mean? We're going to go into a little bit deeper about, we've got a bunch of Marvel dates that have been announced now for 2022 and 2023. Doctor Strange is not going to be one of those because we already know he's coming earlier than that. But I mean, really, let's dig into this thing. Could it really be, is there a solid possibility here that it could be Deadpool? If not, what are some of the other theoretical options? But before we get to any of that stuff, let's talk about the news that actually came out this morning. And it's been a bit of a wild circus, Rob. Yes.
Been a little bit of wild circus in the world of the Joker. Now, as many of you guys know, just to rehash here, Both Todd Phillips, the director of Joker, and Joaquin Phoenix said from the beginning, no sequels, no nothing. This is a one-shot movie. And they insisted on that over and over and over and over again. And as the hundreds of millions turned into billions of money started rolling in, then they started saying, well, we could have an idea. Maybe we could do I don't know. Maybe it's possible. And then once it hit the $1 billion mark, Rob, it became brutally honest, even the people who don't want it the most. It became obvious even to us, or me specifically. Oh, they're going to do another one. They shouldn't, and it's a bad idea. And it'll make money, but I just think narratively it's a bad idea. There's something special about the Joker being what it was as a true one-shot. At least it's not joining the cinematic universe, but even I got to say, look, it's probably going to happen. And then today, Rob, the drama began. And it began with the Hollywood Reporter, one of the most, if not the most, reputable, solid source when it comes to the entertainment industry, said that, yeah, it's a done deal pretty much, that they're going to be doing this. They've let loose, Todd Phillips said, go forth and develop a Joker 2. And that even there was some talk about another villain, with no specifics, but maybe another villain coming along the way as well.
Yeah.
So then that got a lot of, piqued a lot of people's interest. Shortly after that, Deadline, another one of the most reputable, reliable sources in the entertainment industry. Neither one is 100%, but none are, but they are amongst the most reputable and most reliable. Deadline came out with a completely opposite message. Well, sort of opposite. They came out and said, while this is certainly going to happen, there is certainly going to be a Joker 2, their sources tell them that no such agreement has been made at this point. And that no such thing is going on. There has been no discussion about another villainous movie or any sort of thing like that. And to me, it seems like a clear-cut case of, hey, look, these are both two reputable places. They've both got individual contacts inside Warner Brothers. Maybe one knows one thing and the other contact knows something different, or doesn't know what the other contact knew, whatever the case is. Amidst the confusion, Rob, and let's get to the confusion in a second that this all causes. But in all that, the notion of moving forward with Joker 2, you and I talked about this a little bit on the John Campea Show earlier today. Number one, acknowledging that, yes, we all know it's going to happen and it makes good business sense, but I'm left questioning, is this a good idea? Rob, you're a creative exec over at Warner Brothers. Can you see a narratively satisfying way to move forward with something like this? Or is this folly, or is it genius? Or I don't know. How are you seeing it?
Well, here's how I see look, you have an obligation when a movie's made this much money. I don't see any way around the fact that you have to make another one. You owe your shareholders, you owe your company. So you're sort of locked into that. But what you need to do, I think most importantly, is this can't be some cheap cash in. You have to do something that continues the legacy. What you're looking for, if this is at all possible, is you now need to make the Dark Knight of Joker movies.
Right.
If Joker was Batman Begins, now you've got to ratchet it up to another level. And I think one of the reasons that Joker connected with the world is because it was really about something beyond being about a Batman villain. We've talked about it before on the show. It's about income inequality. It's about healthcare. It's about the downtrodden. It's about people being disaffected and not connected to their own society. It's about garbage in the streets and rats in that garbage. And you have to ask yourself, how do you carry on a film that is essentially the legacy of a film that's essentially about why a man descends into madness and supervillainy? And I think the most important thing is carrying this forward and telling a great, compelling story that can connect with people the same way the first movie connected, and not sort of spin off into, well, dare I say it, comic book land. And I'm thinking, if you have that story, if you know where you're going, you greenlight it. You have to make the movie. You have to do it. And it also has to be great. So on one hand, I'm thinking, great, I've got $1 billion movie on my hands. But on the other hand, the pressure to deliver something that resonates with an audience the same way that the first Joker did is enormous. And I don't know, man, if I was an executive, if I was in charge of Warner Brothers, if I was Walter Hamada, or what Toby Emmerich, I'd be like, Todd, you co-wrote this. What Martin Scorsese movies are you going to look to? Maybe The Irishman? What are we going to look at now? Because I think that they're in a very unenviable position. On one hand, hey, we made a lot of money. But on the other hand, you can't just like shit out a sequel and expect the audience, because everybody's going to expect it to do even better now.
Yeah,
and I think the Joker,
which isn't reasonable. That is simply not reasonable.
No, because this film, by any metric, who would have thought that this movie would have connected? I mean, this isn't exactly the feel-good movie of 2019.
Yeah, and it had no Batman, no Superman, none of them. Now, some people have expressed some concerns, and I had some people since our show this morning write out to me and say, John, my one big fear about if they do another one is that they're not really going to care about how well they make it, because they know it's Joker. They're going to make it for $30 million. All they want to do is make $400 million out of it, and they're going to be big and profitable. The one insulation I think there is to that, though, when I think, now I don't want them to do another one, but the one insulation I think to them, Warner Brothers just saying, to hell with it, let's just make another one, and we don't care if it's crappy. The one insulation to that I think is Joaquin Phoenix himself, because regardless of whether he's got an option for another film, if they present to Joaquin Phoenix, who is notoriously picky about his roles,
right?
If they present to Joaquin Phoenix just some sort of schlock, okay, now Arthur breaks out of the asylum and he goes on and starts robbing Chuck E. Cheese's. Yeah. He robs Chuck E. Cheese's. Yeah, he robs Chuck E. Cheese's. It's going to be great. Go for it. How does it end? We don't know. We'll figure it out as we go. Joaquin Phoenix is simply going to say, no, I'm not going to do it. And I think, listen, I've always said this, and I believe it wholeheartedly. The characters are not there to serve the actors. The actors are there to serve the characters. And the characters are there to serve the story. Actors are replaceable. Just like everything, almost every role you can possibly play, the acting role is replaceable, in as much as the second assistant cameraman is replaceable. It's all replaceable. But I don't know that applies to Joker. I mean, let's face it. This thing is the major runaway success, not just because of the brilliance that Todd Phillips brought to bear on this, but because of the performance, possibly Academy Award-winning performance, that we got out of Joaquin Phoenix. And I just don't see how they could possibly do another one without Joaquin Phoenix. And with that sort of power, I think that would be a safeguard that if the Hollywood Reporter is correct, I think Joaquin Phoenix becomes the safeguard between, them putting in a full effort to make a truly great second film. It doesn't mean they'll succeed. They might fail, but at least they'll try, and not really giving a crap and just push something out. We think we can make an easy 300 million profit, even if we just, squat over and crap something out. I think he becomes a safety net in that. And so I at least would then go into a second Joker thinking, okay, they're going to at least give it their best. Again, Rob, here's the problem I brought up this morning. I want to know if you can answer this. My problem that I mentioned this morning is that I don't know how you possibly continue this story without it becoming a typical comic book movie. Because now, okay, you've done the quirky little beginnings. Right. You end this movie with him basically embracing he's the Joker now and him becoming that. Is there somewhere to go with this, maintaining that the essence of what the first film had without it going too far? I don't know. Is there a way to do that?
Well, I think that is the $1 million question you're asking, because I've never seen anybody do anything like that. But you know what I would look to? I mean, obviously this movie was heavily influenced by Scorsese's work in the 70s. But I would look to things like, and it doesn't have to be like this, but you know what? I was thinking, what would I make if I was making a Joker sequel? Where would I look? I would look to a movie like Fight Club, which is really about social revolution. It's about, in the case of Fight Club, disaffected men, trying to reestablish their masculinity and become revolutionaries. I mean, of course, was that all in the head of someone? But something along those lines. I mean, the way they leave it with Joker is that he's become, in a way, this revolutionary figure. And all of the anger that society has is bubbling up. We see it's literally bubbling up in the city. And he becomes, whether he's at the center of the maelstrom or he inspired it, or even if it was just in his own head, I think this idea of revolution, does the Joker become some kind of a revolutionary? I mean, is he going to lead? You know, he's always had henchmen. And now what if, you know, that's what the Joker does, is he becomes a symbol for social upheaval of some kind. And I was like, that could be really interesting if they did it well. Again, it's not an easy thing to do. It is a tough thing to do. And I don't know how they could make it totally work, but building on what they've done before, so much of the social fabric and so much of the city of Gotham and what's going on is a part of that movie, that I think you have to continue those ideas further. Like, he can't just be like, I have a plan to take over the world. It can't be like that. It's got to be something that he's got to, the Joker must be informed by what he went through his whole life, with his mother, with the endless therapy, the drugs that he had to take, or that he ended up not taking to finally clear his mind, the fact that the society let him down, the fact that Thomas Wayne might have nefariously been involved with something. I mean, basically, he's been wrong, and he stands in for everybody who has been wrong. So what is the next step? I would think tear down the civilization, or tear down the society that wronged him.
Some people just want to watch the world burn, Robert.
Absolutely. You know, and I was, now that I think about it, it's kind of like what Heath Ledger's Joker was doing, but only within the criminal underworld. But what if somebody was doing that on a much larger basis and wasn't so directed toward his attacks? What if he just wanted to literally tear down the entire fabric of society, or try? I mean, that could be really interesting, depending on how it's written. I don't know how you would quite do that, but I would see that movie.
There's a couple of things I think are going to disappoint a couple of people. Number one, I had a bunch of people responding to me on Twitter saying, you can only do a number 2 if Batman's in it. I'm like, well, isn't that exactly what people said about the first one? Isn't that the exact thing? It's like, you can't do a Joker movie without Batman. And yet here we did. And one of the things that the Hollywood Reporter article did make very clear is that they're not looking at Batman, which is, thank goodness.
No, I mean, I think I agree. Don't you think it would work without Batman?
Oh, I mean, it made $1 billion without Batman. They don't need Batman, clearly. I think the other thing that's going to disappoint a lot of people is a lot of people think is, well, then he's going to meet Harley Quinn. He's going to come under the care of a Dr. Quinzel. And it's like, well, there's 2 reasons why that won't work. Number one, a Harley Quinn character in this Joker world doesn't fit. I mean, it just does not work. That a Harley Quinn character in this iteration of Joker's world doesn't work, doesn't fit. But the main reason why I think people are going to be disappointed is because Warner Brothers becomes self-territorial. And with Margot Robbie playing Harley Quinn right now, and they still having future plans for her as Harley Quinn, and there's no way they are going to even begin to risk pissing off Margot Robbie with the whole fiasco and the way they mismanaged the whole Jared Leto situation. Let's put it this way, nothing is impossible, but I will be shocked if they brought in a Harley Quinn. Do you see any possibility of them doing that?
No, because it sort of defeats the purpose of what this Joker, now it's going to be a series, is all about. You know, it's funny to me, like, the one lesson to learn from the Joker movie is to dispense with everything you know about what you thought a Joker movie would be. And that is, the first thing is to get rid of everybody else, to get rid of Batman, to get rid of Harley Quinn. Once you do all that, you bring Batman and Harley Quinn in, the reason that the original Joker was successful gets removed as well. Because then it suddenly becomes about them. It's no longer about Arthur Fleck. It's about what Arthur Fleck is going to do in relation to Harley Quinn or the Batman. And that's not what this movie's franchise is all about. I mean, this movie is really all about the forging of a supervillain, the forging of a man. Why does Joker become what he becomes. It's only after he becomes that thing that he would have Batman and Harley Quinn, because whatever he becomes, that's when he becomes a comic book villain. Right now, he's still a man. He's still a man that now has been awakened from his drug-induced stupor, and now he's going to continue on to eventually become the supervillain that he is. But he has a transitional phase that he has to go through, and that transitional phase might be to try and burn Gotham to the ground first, and he's going to need help, and he's going to have allies. And while I don't see it like Fight Club, like split personality, what I mean by that is he becomes the Tyler Durden revolutionary character that people rally behind and follow. I mean, I would love to see a movie with a Joker as messianic revolutionary. The Che Guevara of Gotham City or some craziness like that.
Yet murderous psychopath at the same time.
Oh, yeah. No,
I think we can't lose sight of that. Yeah, that's got to be a part. We can't turn him into the anti-hero.
No, he's like he's like a cult leader that's going to lead everybody down the path. I mean, they're going to be skipping and singing all the way, but they're on the road to hell. I mean, this is going to take everybody down with them. And the only person left standing is going to be, I see the movie ending with a stadium full of dead people, Joker standing in the middle, a la Bane, but everybody else is dead. And he's laughing and he just walks off the playing field.
It's his greatest punchline. Question here is, guys, what do you think about this whole thing? Now, of course, with all the confusion, one saying it's happening, one saying it's not. Should they do it? If they did, how could they do it? Should we be worried it would just be a cash grab, even though every film ever made in the history of Hollywood is a cash grab, but whatever. What do you guys think about all this? Jump down in the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. Second topic we're going to cover here today was one that kind of came out of nowhere, Rob, earlier this week. It kind of happened just about an hour before we started one of our shows this week, but Henry Cavill has basically come out and said that he has not given up on Superman. He's not resigned the Superman character. He believes that Clark Kent, Kal-El still has stories to tell, that there are still important parts and aspects to this character that need to be explored, and that he is not giving up this character to go and do that. Now, it's important to keep in mind, of course, that that's him saying that, not Warner Brothers.
Right.
Warner Brothers, and we mentioned this on the show earlier this week, is that Warner Brothers was given the opportunity to say Henry Cavill still our Superman. When asked directly, they dodged the question. They said, we love Henry Cavill, but we have no plans for a Superman movie at this time. They had the golden opportunity. All they had to say is, yes, Henry Cavill's still our Superman. Yes, when we do get around to doing Superman again, Henry Cavill. No, they dodged the question altogether, and that speaks volumes. Henry may not have given up on Superman, but Warner Brothers may have given up on his Superman. We don't know. We'll have to hang in there, and we'll have to see. The question becomes here, Rob. I'm on record. Henry Cavill is my favorite Superman of all time. And I know that's a little bit of sacrilege, but I can deal with that. He is my favorite Superman of all time. I love this guy. I love seeing him in movies. I think he has every single quality down to his DNA of what a true movie star is. I think he's got it. And I would love to see him continue as Superman. My question, though, Rob, is when you look at Henry Cavill right now and you see the successes he's having, he had a massive hit in Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Granted, it didn't do well at the box office, but he had a marvelous film in Man from U.N.C.L.E. And now he's got a show coming out that's got everybody buzzing about The Witcher that's already been picked up for season 2.
And they supposedly have it beat out. It's beat out for 7 seasons or something.
Yeah, which is what they said initially, is that they've got material there for that long. We'll see how far after season 3, if at all, Netflix lets it go, because we all know how Netflix operates. The question I have at this point is, the biggest grief in Henry Cavill's career up until this point has been Superman. Whether it's been because, Warner Brothers failed to have his back when asked directly, is Henry Cavill still going to be Superman? We love Henry Cavill. Warner Brothers refused to have his back. He has been a perfect ambassador for the DC brand and for comic book movies in general. Henry Cavill has been the ideal ambassador for comic book movies as a whole. But his biggest headaches have been this movie. Warner Brothers didn't have his back. All the griping and complaining he had to hear about Man of Steel, which is a generic masterpiece, in my opinion. He had to hear all the complaints about Batman versus Superman. He had to see what he thought was going to be a Man of Steel 2 turned into a Batman movie, which he himself even talked about recently. He said, well, Batman versus Superman was really a Batman movie. And then he had to hear all the crap and Mustache Gate and everything about surrounding Justice League. The question I have, Rob, and maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't. If you're Henry Cavill, do you even want to play Superman anymore? And I'm not saying he doesn't. Clearly, he came out and made these statements. He'd still like to play Superman. But why would a Henry Cavill, who's experiencing some big growth in his career right now outside of this, and seeing that Warner Brothers failed to have his back, all the complaining, all the nightmares for his career have come from the Warner Brothers properties, why does he still want to do it, do you think?
You know why? Here's what I can only go if I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. That's what I'm trying to do. Because I think he wants to go out with one great Superman under his belt. Because if they make an epic Man of Steel movie that just knocks it out of the park, like you always say, what do you say about winning?
Winning cures everything.
Winning cures everything. And I think never would that be more true than in the case of Henry Cavill's Superman. We love Man of Steel, but if they were to make another Superman movie, some like 3-hour epic, and it was great, then he walks away and he's like, I've done a great job. I mean, I've maintained for all of those hashtag release the Snyder Cut people that I thought for HBO Max, why not go in and do, if they do the release the Snyder Cut of Justice League or whatever, they could go in and Zack Snyder could tweak all 3 movies and release that as this trilogy, since of course he did 3 cuts of Watchmen for Warner Brothers. They're used to that with him. And then they announce a 4th movie and they allow Zack Snyder and they allow Henry Cavill to make this kick-ass, as long as it has a great screenwriter, this kick-ass Superman movie. Because why not? People would like that.
I just don't.
One more time, and knowing you could knock it out of the park.
Do you come back for just one more film, though? And does Warner Brothers have him come back if it's just for one more film when they're trying to build franchise and all this kind of stuff? Or because here's the thing, and maybe this all ties into Henry Cavill's involvement. I think if they ever did finish and then release a Snyder Cut, I believe that spells the end of the DCEU. I don't think Warner Brothers ever agrees, and it could be, this is just a theory. I don't think Warner Brothers ever agrees to finish and release that Snyder Cut unless they were finished with the DCEU. Because then such a thing can't hurt their ongoing franchise. Because let's face it, if Warner Brothers finishes and releases a Snyder Cut, it can do nothing but harm the DCEU as it is. It'll fulfill a lot of people's curiosity, but it's not going to create any positive conversations about what's going on in the DCU now, reminding everybody about the Ben Affleck fiasco, reminding everybody about what's been going on with Henry Cavill, reminding everybody about, the divisiveness of the other films. I just don't see how Warner Brothers thinks anything positive can come out of releasing that unless they feel like, you know what, we're going to wrap up this iteration of the DCU. So let's wrap that up and then we'll put the polishing nuggets on the Snyder's thing and release that. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think what they're doing is actually smart. Like Aquaman, you have Jason Momoa come back and play Aquaman. There's the briefest of mentions of Justice League in Aquaman. For all intents and purposes, it is a standalone movie.
In many ways, yeah.
I mean, and, Wonder Woman 1984, even though it's Gal Gadot, it'll be her 3rd appearance, or her 4th appearance her 3rd appearance as Wonder Woman, because she was Wonder Woman in Batman v Superman. Oh, no, Wonder Woman in Justice League and Wonder Woman in Wonder Woman. So it's her 4th appearance as Wonder Woman. But this movie doesn't necessarily have a tie to the Justice League because it's in 1984. So I think they could go on and they could basically treat, and Matt Reeves' Batman series is not connected to the DCEU, apparently. So they could go on and continue to make these quote unquote standalone sci-fi science fiction based, like Superman is more of a sci-fi franchise now. That's how Man of Steel was. I saw it as a First Contact story. So you could do all of these different kinds of movies. And if you want somebody to cross over with Aquaman, you could. So if you were to make movies moving forward, there doesn't have to be a DCEU. That's what I was trying to say. Even though Aquaman was introduced as part of the DCEU, it didn't really pan out, but you can still continue with Jason Momoa as Aquaman and just sort of back away from the shared universe. If you want to have people cross over, you could, but it's not the interlocking universe that the MCU would be. They can do standalone movies. They can tell stories of Batman at different times in his life. They can make a period piece, Wonder Woman, that's set in 1984. And
how then does a Henry Cavill fit into all that, and possibly another Henry Cavill movie? How does that fit into this construct?
Because I think that the first Man of Steel, like we've seen Henry Cavill cross over, but you don't have to. Man of Steel didn't. So you just do another standalone Superman story, and maybe just like in Aquaman, there's one line where they talk about the other DC characters, but you tell a Superman story that doesn't involve them. And I don't think, if the story was good, like Aquaman, I was wondering, like, there's one day Atlantis throws up half the warships in the world on the beach in Aquaman. You see it's done in a news report. And no one's like, where's the Justice League to go, what's going on with Atlantis? Like, they don't even involve anybody. They're like, you fought Steppenwolf. There's nothing about any other heroes. There's nothing about anybody coming to the aid of there's a gigantic battle brewing with all the Seven Seas people, and you don't hear about anybody anywhere except in Atlantis. You could do the same thing with a Superman movie and be like, well, Aquaman, they reached out to Atlantis for comment, and the answer was Aquaman goes, no comment. And that's it. That's all you show in a Superman movie. If there's some global cataclysm, Superman's handling it, because it really doesn't matter. It's comic books. Every standalone series can then cross over. When you do Crisis on Infinite Earths, you'll cross over a storyline within a regular run of a comic book for 1 or 2 issues. But for the most part, when you have single issues of comic books, those characters have their adventures on their own. And then in Justice League, they're together with other people. And I think people would watch a Superman movie if it was good and not sit there and go, well, wait a minute, what's the rest of the DCEU doing?
So you're advocating, if I'm understanding you're advocating for for DC to continue down a path that really differentiates us from the MCU. The MCU, which seems to try to take advantage of at every turn, show off, this is all interconnected. And right. You think they should go a little bit more, for lack of a better term, isolationist with their individual stories, which seems to be the path Hamada's on, but you think that's the way for them to continue?
I do, because then the pressure isn't on them, because no one's going to sit there and go, if you see a great superhero movie, Wonder Woman set in 1917, it was set in World War I. Nobody was asking themselves or clamoring about the rest of the Justice League because it was a different time. So I think as long as the movie is good, and as long as people understand that sometimes we'll cross over, sometimes we won't, they haven't been as successful as the MCU is. So I think they should just keep doing what they're doing. We got basically a standalone Aquaman movie. We're getting a standalone Wonder Woman movie. Why not another standalone Superman movie? Like
standalone Batman movie?
Well, that's what they're doing with Matt Reeves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, you're getting all of these different iterations. And if you want, you can cross them over.
You can't cross over Batman, though.
No, well, right.
It's a completely different thing.
Yeah, although, I mean, if you wanted to show a Robert Pattinson Batman and Henry Cavill, if it was good, if you did a Brave and the Bold movie, I mean, it would be like just
pretend. Like, you basically take the Fox X-Men approach. Just do it as if this was the way it's always been.
Or
it worked for Fox.
And James Bond, when Pierce Brosnan was Bond, they introduced Judi Dench as M. Then Judi Dench was M when Daniel Craig took over for his first 00 mission, and nobody
they just pretended everything was fine.
Yeah, and nobody's going to care. I mean, if you like the actors and you like the characters and you like the story, most moviegoers aren't going to really care. I mean, if you look at the X-Men continuity, like, especially after Days of Future Past, it's kind of a mess. Like, is there any?
Yeah. So we're advocating, and I don't think this is necessary, but you're advocating the Fox mentality of continuity, schmontinuity, and let's go a little bit more isolationist and not worry about every single thing. There's 5 other, every member of the Avengers crosses over with every other member of the Avengers, every other film.
Yeah, I mean, and like the DCEU really would be Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League, and that was okay. And then we learned what worked, and then we spun off on our own. And we'll from now on, there'll be individual movies, and if we want to have people cross over, they can.
All right, question is, guys, what do you think about all this? How do you think Henry Cavill, number one, why would you think Henry Cavill even want to come back? And if so, how do you think could he possibly be Superman? Could Warner Brothers be looking to bring him back? Or has Warner Brothers already moved on from that, regardless of how Henry Cavill feels? What do you guys think? Jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's go on to one more topic here before we dive into your live questions that you guys have been sending in. The other day, we talked about the fact that Marvel has fleshed out their release dates for 2022 and 2023, which leaves us with 8 dates. 4 in 2022, 4 in 2023, and none of that is even counting what they're going to do on Disney+. But we got 8 movie dates in those 2 years. The one that is official is Black Panther 2. We know that one, so that's one down. Now, we speculate about what some of the others could be. I speculated that Doctor Strange 2 could be one of those. Doctor Strange 2 is already announced earlier, so get that out of the way. But Ant-Man 2 is obvious. They're going to be doing that. Captain Marvel 2 is obvious. They're going to be doing that. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is obvious. They're going to be doing that. On and on. There's a number, including, I believe, one of them is going to be in Avengers 5. We've got Blade that's already been announced, so we know that's going to be one of them. And it came down and it led us down to 1 or 2 spots that are left that we weren't really sure about, because all those other ones are pretty much locks and no-brainers. Somebody brought up that day, Rob, the notion about what about Deadpool 3? Now, we know that Ryan Reynolds has been meeting with Marvel. That could be about $1 billion. It could have been about video game stuff. It could have been about anything. But still, we know, Rob, because you and I were at CinemaCon last year and Alan Horn highlighted Deadpool a couple of times during his presentation for Disney. So we know that. And we know they've said they want to move forward. Now, what has been unclear is it seems like they still haven't figured out what it is they want to do with Deadpool. Right. Do we have him in the MCU as a PG-13? Do we keep him rated R and have him outside of the... Sorry, I said DCU. Do we have him as rated R and have him outside of the MCU? Do we... how do we approach this? It really has felt for a long time like they still haven't quite come to a firm decision on that. But that said, I think they know that they can only wait so long. Yeah. Like there's not an endless kind of time frame on here. You do want to strike a little bit while the iron's hot, and Deadpool was fantastic. Deadpool 2 was almost as equally fantastic. They're going to want to move on this. So, Rob, let me ask you, do you think, if you had to rate a possibility and chances that one of those last 2 spots would actually be a Deadpool 3, what do you think the chances are that it could be Deadpool 3? 0%, 100%, somewhere in the middle? How do you see it?
I think probably somewhere in the middle. But what's great about doing Deadpool 3, it's a proven commodity. It's something that's already come out. It's already proven itself. You're looking at a $1.5 billion franchise there between the 2 movies. So it makes sense to me. They don't even have to. They could release a movie and it's not part of the MCU. It closes out the Deadpool trilogy. And maybe they could do funny things, but it doesn't have to necessarily be in the MCU. It can be they can still have Negasonic Teenage Warhead. They can still have Colossus. They can still do exactly what they were doing before if that's what they wanted to do and have it come out. It was just Kevin Feige and Marvel. I mean, it was, it still had the Marvel logo in the front of it. So they just released it as a 20th Century Fox Marvel movie. And at the end, they could literally, in the last movie, he goes back and kills Ryan Reynolds before he can take the Green Lantern job. At the end of
which was great.
At the end of a third Deadpool movie, they could literally have him opening up the 4th wall, and walking out of the screen, and he walks over, and the last shot is him walking over to Disney headquarters in his Deadpool suit, going, you know what? I think it's time for a change. And you could literally have Deadpool in character, leaving the Fox X-Men whatever universe,
R-rated universe,
and walk over to the MCU, and literally, there could be a waiting room, and you could have Thor and Captain America and Tony. I'm sure you could get get Robert Downey Jr. to come back, and maybe he's walking out one way. Hey man, I'll see you later. And or Deadpool's like, I'll see you later, and Robert Downey Jr. is like, no, you really won't, but good luck to you. Just something like that. It could be really funny, where the Deadpool trilogy is closed out, and if they did something like that and continued on, I definitely think that it's going to be one of those two movies. I think that's Deadpool, but it doesn't have to be part of the MCU. They could do something really clever with it, and they've got many different ways they could go, and it also allows Ryan Reynolds to change up his shtick. How do you have Deadpool? Like, you could make it a little different. People still love Deadpool. They still love his character, but it's a way that they could end the Deadpool franchise and start it anew at the same time within, and not betray what he's already done.
See, I have mixed feelings on it, and I'll tell you why. Number one, because I love Deadpool the way he is. I love Deadpool. I don't want a PG-13 Deadpool. I don't want it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Listen, before we had Deadpool and we didn't know what it was going to be rated, back before, all we knew is that Ryan Reynolds got the green light to make a Deadpool movie. We didn't yet know what it was going to be rated. I said, listen, you can do it PG-13. You can. You can do it PG-13. I'd prefer R, but you can get a PG-13. But now we live in a world, and I've said this before, now we live in a world where we've had R-rated Deadpool.
Right.
We didn't live in that world before. We live in that world now, and I don't want to go back. And to me, you lose something so much about that character if you suddenly make him not rated R anymore. Not to mention, what is Marvel hurting for, we don't have enough characters in our movie. Well, we're slumming it now. Just grab anybody. No, they've got tons and tons. Do we really need yet another character in the MCU that's doing so well on his own outside of the MCU? So that's how I feel about it. But Rob, I got a feeling you might be onto something, and it might be with the way they're going.
What if you made a Deadpool and a Hulk movie? You teamed up Deadpool and the Hulk, and they went on and they had a PG Ragnarok-esque adventure.
Well, you couldn't, because you can't have, the Hulk has to be a far distant secondary character for them to be allowed to make such a movie. So you couldn't make a Deadpool and Hulk movie, unfortunately. But I don't know. I think what you're proposing could very well be what Marvel and Disney ends up doing. Do the third R-rated Deadpool movie, and then have that wrapped up and bring him into the MCU. I just don't see the need for him to... Listen, for the longest time, Deadpool was the highest grossing R-rated films ever made. They're still number 2 and number 3. Deadpool, and nobody likes to hear this, sorry, Deadpool don't need the MCU.
No,
he's proven he doesn't need the MCU.
And the MCU's going on.
The MCU's proven they don't need Deadpool. So why the forced need to put together? I don't know, but I know there are a lot of fans that really want to see Deadpool mixing it up with some of the other MCU heroes. And listen, I'm not going to lie, there's some appeal to that. Of course there is. And I'll be on board for it regardless, but I think you're right.
Well, it could be interesting. I'm just saying that, and they do it. They need to do a third R-rated Deadpool movie.
I certainly hope so.
They need a transition. So. If they want to bring Deadpool into the MCU, they need a transitional movie. And I think you have another third adventure. And look, having a trilogy is always a good thing. There's no Back to the Future 4 yet. And I think having trilogies is kind of a nice way to end it all. And if you did a really kick-ass third Deadpool movie, the possibilities of having him leave that trilogy at the end, I mean, if you did an ending like they did for Deadpool 2, it could be epic. And it could be funny, and then people would be waiting, they'd be clamoring to see what happened in the MCU with Deadpool's arrival. Or just end the trilogy there. Don't do another one.
I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here. Question is, guys, what do you think? Do you think there is a solid chance that one of these empty MCU slots for 2022 and 2023 could actually be a Deadpool movie? Do you think it could? Do you think it couldn't? And if you think it can, how do you think they're going to approach that? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. Listen, that'll do it for all the stuff that we had planned here to talk about. Now let's go on and talk about the things you guys have been wanting to talk about. We're going to save some time here and go over and take your live questions. And we're going to get things started off here with Florian Stumpf, who writes, "Hey guys, just wanted to say hi and that I'm glad the show is back again." Well, thank you so much, Florian. We appreciate that very much. Brendan Millspa writes, I don't know about you, but Todd Phillips doing a Lex movie and a Joker movie sequel sounds exactly like a made-up story. Plus, while I'd love to be proven wrong, Joker 2 sounds like a terrible idea. What is there to do? Well, listen, Brennan, I don't want them to do another one. But I think Robert pointed out several ways that you could move forward with it. Again, I don't like the notion of them doing it on a philosophical level, but there are directions you could go. And let's face it, the Lex Luthor thing, look, everybody's been speculating they should do the Lex Luthor movie next. But the reality is, if Todd Phillips was going to try to do another film and replicate what he did with Joker, there really is only one other person to do, and that is Lex Luthor. So while it does sound a little out there, it also does kind of make unfortunate sense. I don't know, Rob, how do you see that?
Well, yeah, yes, I see that, but you know what you just put in my head, and I don't know if I can ever not see this. If Todd Phillips does do Luthor, and he's done Joker, I want him to do the entire Legion of Doom. like one at a time, like each individual. You've got the heavy hitters, but it would be really interesting. Like, what would a Legion of Doom look like in a world where there's no superheroes? So
should they come out of that Darth Vader helmet from under the swamp and come up out of the water?
I mean, I like the idea of like, I love the end of Justice League. My favorite thing in Justice League was the Terminator and Lex Luthor at the end of the movie, and you're like, oh, we're never going to see what happens next.
Big Dungeons and Dragons player Joe Manganiello, huge D&D fan.
If they did that, it would be. I mean, obviously, the problem is what we all want is too comic booky to do in the Joker universe that's already been set up.
Right.
And I think that doing a look at a ruthless, the thing about Lex Luthor that's really interesting, if you're a really smart, motivated, sort of sociopathic megalomaniac that's bent on you want to be a captain of industry, you want to be the richest man in the world, you want to eventually be president, that character could be really interesting. And what happens when a character who's at the top of the world, suddenly Superman shows up? And you're like, well, you become obsessed with wanting to best the best man on the earth, even though he's an alien. And that's really interesting. I mean, I think, and again, you don't show Superman's arrival, but you set up a character that what is it like to be a character like Lex Luthor? He's not like a tech nerd like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. He's this charismatic guy that is a captain of industry and then gets to do all these things. And if they eventually make him president, I mean, you could make a really cool movie out of that. A driven, egomaniacal guy who's very good at what he does and then ends up getting elected.
Just as long as they don't cross him over then with Joker and try to create some stupid shared cinematic universe, because Superman can't exist in that Joker
they can't.
world.
I'm just kidding about the Legion of Doom thing, but it would be to see something like that. And basically, in a way, what drives, we've always said movies are only as good as their villains. And what we got in Joker is just that, a look at a villain. And I like that idea because in the back of our minds, we know that one day they're going to come up against these superheroes. But why do we have to see that? Why do we have to see that battle against a superhero yet again? It's kind of neat that we're seeing these characters in their embryonic state before who they become. We already know who they become. We've seen it a million times, whether it's an animation or live action, or if you read it in the pages of comics. So what I loved about Joker is that we're seeing something that isn't usual. To see Joker with Batman, it's the same thing. We've seen Joker with Batman twice already. We don't need to see that again. We have a new version of Joker. I mean, what are you going to do? Watch variations on that theme again? I want to see Joker do something outside of Batman.
All right. Murray Reich is writing in, one of two. I agree with Elizabeth Banks' statement regarding women's superhero movies. The only thing I would say is that I didn't go see Charlie's Angels and Ghostbusters because the trailers were bad. Ghostbusters I saw on demand, and I wasn't a fan. I liked Ocean's 8 because it was a good movie and it got good reviews and it made money.
It was good.
Yeah, Ocean's 8 was good. I enjoyed Ocean's 8. I also got a kick out of Ghostbusters. I still remember when me and Schnepp came out to watch and they were both like, you know what, it wasn't great, but it had its moments. I had several complaints about it too. But so basically, look, what he's talking about is Elizabeth Banks. She mentioned that, there's a stereotype that men don't go see female action films. And she is correct in that. There is a stereotype that says that. And then she says, now the difference, you get Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, but they're comic book movies, and that's really a male genre thing. And, to a degree, there's some truth in that. But again, at the bottom line is that's not why people didn't go see Charlie's Angels. They didn't go to see Charlie's Angels because, like Murray is saying, they had terrible trailers, and then it was only a mediocre movie at best that wasn't going to get big, strong word of mouth. And it was a movie that I'm predisposed to liking a movie like that, but even I said I couldn't recommend it. It's just not good enough. So I see where you're coming from with that, Murray. James Rye writes, one of two. I know they needed to tie up Cap's story arc, but why didn't Steve just bring Peggy back to the future with him? He could have had the best of both worlds. He would not have had to leave his friends, and it would not have messed up the timeline any more than him staying in the past. Well, James, that would make Captain America a selfish son of a bitch. Because, hi, I'm here to rip you out of your life. Hi, Peggy. This life you've built, this incredible foundation you're establishing, these breakthroughs you're making, the ways you're saving the world. Yeah, you're not important. None of that matters. I'm ripping you out of your life and taking you to my life. Say bye to everybody. And by the way, that's in their timeline, so that messes up the timeline. So I think there's a lot of reasons why they didn't do that. What do you think?
What about
Bob?
everything she had to go on to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. and as an agent herself?
Yeah, I mean, it messes up all the timeline that comes after that. So it's very problematic. It's very, very problematic. Not to mention, it would have been downright selfish of Captain America to do that. Okay, Topher Rocks writes, hey guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but should the MCU look more like Wakanda now? It's been 5-6 years in the timeline since they shared their technology. I thought about that, Rob, once. It's like, wait a minute, as we come in, shouldn't it look so much, shouldn't the world be far more technologically advanced now that the mind-blowing sci-fi technology of Wakanda has been shared with the world? My theory is this. The snap changed everything.
Yes.
And I think we're going to find that out later in the MCU, that not only did the king disappear, which is huge, the king disappeared. Half the world's population is gone, including half of the population of Wakanda. You bet your ass they closed their borders after that.
Yeah, they would
You bet your ass they closed it. So that's always been they didn't say that, and maybe they'll say that's not the case when the movies continue, but that's been my operating theory. Rob, how do you see it?
No, I mean, I think the world, we have glimpses of that in Endgame, that great shot at the Statue of Liberty with all those boats just there. The world was thrown into a state of chaos. I mean, they wouldn't know if half the population of the world dropped out tomorrow. The last thing people are going to do is, let's go get Wakandan technology and help. I mean, people would be wandering around in a daze for years. Look how the Avengers themselves were affected. I mean, if half of every person you knew, I mean, I don't even know what I would do. What would you do? Like, if you had a job, even tomorrow, talking on the internet, if you disappeared or I disappeared and half the population of the world was gone, would you want to do this anymore? Who would make movies? Nobody would care. People would be like, what does my life mean now? So I think the world was thrown into a horrible state for the 5 years.
And that includes Wakanda.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, I agree. All right. Let's see here. Suthius writes, hey guys, Tony rescued stepping off army plane in Iron Man. Tony rescued stepping off army plane in Iron Man is a great parallel with him rescued stepping off the Benatar in Endgame. Full circle. I never saw it as that personally. You could look at that and see an interesting kind of look where he's come from that to this.
Sure.
You could see that. Sure. I've never thought of it in those terms though, Rob, have you?
No, but I look, someone was saying about his sacrifice in New York when he went through the portal with that's all true. I mean, but I don't think it's necessarily intentional. But I mean, if you want to see it that way, I like that idea. It's
interesting imagery.
Yeah.
Canada Rocks writes, I am loving The Watchmen. Even critics who didn't like the first episode seem to be coming around. I can't wait to see Lube Man again. Yeah, Lube Man that's an interesting thing. The only one I didn't really enjoy was episode 4. And I didn't hate episode 4. It's just the only one I didn't really enjoy. It's been getting really interesting. And what they've been doing with Glass, by the way, I love that character. I love that character. Of course, he is, of course, in the Hulk universe. He is Mastermind, I believe, in the Hulk universe there. But I think he is de facto my favorite character. I'm also loving Ozymandias. I mean, seeing Jeremy Irons is great, and every moment Jeremy Irons is on screen in this show is just a moment worth watching. He's great in this, but yeah, I'm really digging it so far. Rob, I know you teeter, right? Like you're like, you said something brilliant. You said, I can't tell if I seethingly hate this show or if I absolutely love it, right?
Yeah. I first of all, I'm really enjoying watching it. I find it incredibly compelling. It's really interesting, but I can't decide as a longtime Watchmen fanatic. First of all, I know you talked about how Anne saw it and watched it and liked it, but especially this last episode, it was so tied into the comic book and the whole thing about the psychic blast and the giant squid. And I'm like, if you don't know what Watchmen is and you were watching this, I'm like, would you understand anything that's going on? I mean, but I can't decide whether I really love it or I think it's the most pretentious TV show that's ever been made. And that the jury's out, because I have theories as to what's going on, and I'll be curious to see where it all goes. You know, we had the 5th episode. There's only 4 more episodes. We know next episode is basically a bunch of flashbacks because the nostalgia drug, and according to the it's coming next week on Watchmen, she's having a lot of flashbacks into the past, and time is fractured and she doesn't know where she is or who she is or what she is. It's going to be really interesting to see how all of this is all revealed. But where's it all going? What's with the Millennium Clock? It's going to be. I don't think I found a TV show more interesting than this in a long time. But on the other hand, I do think it's very pretentious.
All right, let's see here. What's next here? Suthius writes, the moment Rhodey and Tony close their visors as the hammer drones come in for the attack is such an awesome moment and an awesome fight scene. It's a decent action scene in a pretty regrettable. I call Iron Man 2 the worst of the MCU movies. And it's it's not terrible, but I think it is the weakest of the MCU movies. That's definitely an okay moment. I love the sound that their visors make when the metal hits the metal, that clanking noise, and just the one shot of the two of them. That moment is badass. And I would find it more that way if there was more dramatic weight to it. Yeah. But that's the thing to me. One of the things I always say, action or visual effects without dramatic purpose is just visual noise. When you are invested in a scene dramatically and narratively, it heightens the experience incredibly. That's why I think the airport scene is so great. Not just because, of course, talking about the scene in Civil War, not just because, look at all these inner characters fighting each other, but it's because you know what's going on. Right. What's at stake narratively. You understand the backgrounds of these characters and what's going on and all this kind of stuff. And Iron Man 2 is just a poorly conceived movie with an actor who really didn't care, and talking about Mickey Rourke, and a character I never bought into, and it just made it so dramatically I wasn't invested. And if you're not invested in it, it's hard to get too pumped out, even when the action on screen is really great. I found that's how it suffered for me, Rob. So that's just kind of my take on it.
You have spoken.
I have spoken. All right, let's see. Topher Rocks writes, do you guys consider the Batman vs. Superman Comic-Con trailer one of the best trailers of all time? I love both Logan trailers as well. It is certainly one of the best comic book trailers of all time. Yeah. That trailer, dude, I just remembered. You know that feeling a lot of people had when Infinity War was coming? Like, this is it. This is the build-up. Honestly, when I saw the first trailer for Batman vs. Superman, to me, at the moment, this is the fulfillment of the promise of what comic book movies could be. Yes. Right? That's exactly. Because how could you not? You're seeing something you never thought you'd ever see. I mean, it was, yes. And it was epic. And, that scene of Batman, first of all, seeing Batman there looking bad, then looking up into the rainy sky, the lightning flashes, and it's Superman hovering over them like, like it's like we now live in a world where we've seen the movie, and I like the movie, but it was very divisive and a lot of people didn't like it, and I understand that, and that's fine. But prior to being in the world where it already came out, when that trailer, when we lived in a world that had not yet had Batman versus Superman, and that trailer dropped, dude, it was, I mean, I don't like, it's a stupid word, it's overused, but God, it was epic. It was just so epic. And like, again, like Endgame, with some of the issues I have with Endgame, it was the fulfillment of what comic book movies can be this. It was the fulfillment of the promise. But before that, I thought it was going to be Batman versus Superman because of that trailer.
And I'll tell you, the opening of, I've never articulated this ever aloud. This is an exclusive, John. The opening of Batman v Superman, from seeing the end of Man of Steel from Bruce Wayne's perspective, that sequence, that 10 minutes, is my favorite scene in any comic book movie ever, of just scenes.
Wow.
Because it's the first time that you ever really get a sense of how apocalyptic battles between super powered people could actually be, and it's the first time that I ever felt like I'm seeing something that I've never seen before or since in a comic book movie, when you're watching it from Bruce Wayne's perspective, and the horror and what's going on with the world engines and the buildings coming down and all of that. I felt like, my God, this evokes a feeling in me. And look, as much as I love the MCU, the battles of New York, fighting Ultron, even fighting Thanos in Infinity War when he's dropping moons on people's heads, it was nothing. I watching, because it was done in such that realistic manner, I just felt something in that scene that I'd never felt in a comic book movie before. The rest of the movie does not live up to that, but that sequence and coming off of Man of Steel, I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time I've seen something, what it really felt like to read about a real superhero battle, something that Alex Ross would have painted that I saw in the pages of a comic book. I felt like I was seeing this apocalyptic vision that I hoped the rest of the movie would continue. And I do like Batman v Superman a lot more than most people.
I'll tell you what else that scene did. And, you're right. It is one of the greatest scenes in comic book movie history. The other thing that scene did, which I thought was so important, was it answered the question that a lot of laymen would have, because a lot of people who don't, really know all the lore of the comics and stuff like that were asking, well, wait a minute, why would Batman be fighting Superman? They're both heroes. They answer that question in the opening minutes of that movie, because I'll tell you what, and by the way, one of the finest acting moments in the history of comic book movies was that moment where not only is Bruce seeing all this destruction, and we're looking at, he becomes our avatar for humanity, seeing this, as you described, this apocalyptic event, weaving in out of traffic, losing his friend. He's on the phone with his friend as they die. And then, perfect, he comes across a little girl, and he can't save her. She's already suffered her loss. Where is your mom? And points to a collapsed building. And the moment that I say is one of the finest acting moments ever in comic book movies, because it could have been overplayed, was as Bruce is down on his knee with this little girl, and then his head turns towards the sky. And the look on his face and the look in his eyes told me as an audience at that moment, I had no questions and I had no doubt and I had no hesitations that Batman believes that alien has got to go. And I bought into it immediately, without any words, without any doubt, without Bruce sitting there going, I vow to you, little girl, I will rid our world of this alien menace that has taken your family from... No words. Just this grief, and then looking up, and oh my God, so good.
The establishment, I mean, he's in a 3-piece suit. He's in this beautifully tailored, bespoke suit. He's not dressed as Batman. He's Bruce Wayne. He's, like you said, he's an everyman. He's a human avatar. And what was interesting was I felt the weight of what was going on in that whole scene more so than in any other comic book movie. We've seen incredible threats, but still you're seeing purple Thanos, and you're seeing it was an extra dollop of fantasy in the MCU. That scene felt absolutely real. That scene felt like we are out of our league. And remember, Superman has been Superman for days. There's not there's no truth, justice, the American way. This is an alien creature. It's a first contact situation. Evil aliens are basically following him. Nobody cares that, he didn't know who Zod and his troops were. This is something new. The Earth is imperiled. Bruce realizes, what am I going to do? There's nothing I can do. And that hatred, like you said, it's a different level of filmmaking, at least for that opening sequence. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the weight of it is just amazing.
Seriously, man, I could talk about that scene all day. It's so good. Anyway, we do have to keep moving here.
I know, we keep waxing rhapsodic. Let's talk about...
Yeah, anyway, and the Logan trailer was also magnificent. I'm not going to go into a whole spiel on that, but that Logan spiel with the Johnny Cash.
We're talking about the trailers.
Yeah, oh my God. Anyway, Suthius writes, scene of Loki going off on Odin, causing the Odin sleep, and Loki going off on Thor before their final fight showcase Hiddleston's great acting chops. Well, listen, there's a lot Hiddleston has done in his career. Rob and I were actually talking off camera earlier today about Tom Hiddleston and all the interesting things that he brings to the job. But I'll tell you what, that highlights why, to me, Thor... The Kenneth Branagh Thor is, to me, still one of the best comic book movies ever made. It is a story about fathers and sons. And that moment when Loki confronts Odin about who he really is and how he came to be an Odin son, I think is it's a tremendously powerful moment. One of the most powerful in the MCU. I don't know, Rob, what do you think about all that?
No, I think it's great. And those moments are, again, that's what the MCU does best. Absolutely. And Hiddleston, it might be my favorite actor in all of the MCU.
All right, let's check this out. Raymond Verrata writes, Variety says Mandalorian surges in its first week, but still behind Stranger Things and DC's Titans. F Batman. Well, yeah, but keep in mind, when Stranger Things debuted, Netflix had 130 million worldwide subscribers and had been around for over a decade.
Yeah.
Let's not get, this was literally its service on opening day. So I wouldn't read too much into that or worry too much about that. Florian Stumpright writes, I can't believe I'm writing this, but I don't want Batman in the Jokerverse, but I'd love to see Bruce Wayne as a major or a policeman. That goes against everything that we about Bruce Wayne. So first of all, if we're ever going to see Bruce Wayne as an adult, then we've got a 60-year-old Joker. And that's
right.
But yeah, it's true, Florian. This world that we got in Joker does not have room for superheroes. There's just not room for it. That's just not the world they created there. So I agree with you on that. What do you think, Rob?
I'm right there with you. I mean, it's so funny because Joker showed us a story about the Joker where Batman doesn't belong. And we did see Bruce Wayne. We did see Bruce and Thomas Wayne. We saw Wayne Manor. I mean, we got all that. And I don't want to see, I would rather see what they're going to do without Batman.
Suthius writes, Barry, my name is Barry Allen and I'm the fastest man alive. Thor, is he though? That is a very Thor thing to say. And I don't know if this is what you're referring to, Suthius, but my favorite interview I ever did was me, Chris Hemsworth, and Chris Evans. And I don't know if they were high or what, but I walked in to meet with them, and because guys were changing lenses or they're changing lights or something, I had about 10 minutes just to sit down and hang out with them for a bit before we started our interview. And it turned into one huge laugh thing. Like just laughing hysterically for 10 minutes. And then we started the interview. And you think, okay, we're all going to reel it in now. I reeled it in. I was the professional. We reel it in, but that reeling it in didn't last. It did not last. Because I go, Chris, I'm talking to Chris Evans. I'm like, Chris, you have an incredible ability to bring the spirit of who the character is really to the forefront of the imagination of the audience. And to which Chris Hemsworth immediately cuts in, does he? and then that was it. The rest of the interview was a lost cause. It was just one big giggle laugh factory the entire rest of the thing. But anyway, Jethro Owl writes, John, for all you know, Joker 2 could be the greatest movie of all time. Dude, for all we know, Sonic the Hedgehog could be the greatest movie of all time. I say it with every single movie that's coming out. It could be. This next movie coming out could be the greatest movie of all time. The Barney the Dinosaur reboot that they're doing could be the greatest motion picture of all time. Of course, Joker 2 could be as well. Absolutely could. You never discount that possibility. JB Bonifacio writes, is the MCU more successful than Star Wars because Marvel leans on its source material, whereas Lucasfilm excommunicates its source material? Lucasfilm doesn't have source material, so I'm not quite sure where you're going with that. And by the way, Star Wars is definitely more successful than MCU. And I always know I get in trouble when I say that. But here's the thing. Talk to me in 40 years. Talk to me in 40 years. And let's see where the MCU is in 40 years. Is the MCU still amongst the most prominent, dominant, pop culturally relevant things? Or has it faded off by the wayside? Because Star Wars has been at the forefront of pop cultural consciousness for over 4 decades. Longevity is the ultimate winner. And maybe in 30 or 40 years, we'll be talking about all cinema is the MCU and everything is MCU and MCU has conquered the world. And maybe that's the case and that will change the conversation. But to me, it's always, every flash in the pan success thing that comes and goes, talk to me in 3.5 more decades.
Right.
And let's have that conversation then. So that's kind of my thought to that.
I would dare say that Marvel Comics helped pave the way for Star Wars to even be successful. Because Marvel Comics had been around. I mean, Marvel itself had been around for decades. And then some of the characters much longer than that. And the idea, the pop culture that Marvel helped usher in. And indeed, the fact that there was a Star Wars comic right when the movie came out that was published by Marvel, there's an art. But as a movie franchise, it's different.
Now, at the same time, Marvel is currently doing things that no other film franchise has ever done.
Sure.
Like you're talking about 20 plus movies in such a short window of time. The box office accomplishments is having all that kind of. So I can say on the one hand, talk to me again in 30 or 40 years. Let's see where the MCU is in 30 or 40 years. At the same time, though, that I say that, it's like you got to acknowledge the MCU is doing things that no other film franchise has ever done.
And also, Star Wars began as a movie franchise. Whereas Marvel had a history as animation.
Well, I think we're specifically talking about the MCU. I think we're specifically talking about the MCU.
Exactly. But I mean, as a whole, I think you have to look at these things now holistically because Star Wars started out as a movie franchise, but spawned comics and spawned books and spawned animated shows. Whereas with Marvel, it just happened backwards. And now they're kind of meeting in the middle.
But just to be clear, there is no source material for Star Wars, so I'm not quite sure where that's coming from. Anyway, Suthius writes, Ray can hold the fort if both of you got snapped. I'm sure he could. I could get Ray in here to do this show. Oh my God, he'd be so entertaining. He would also get my show canceled really quick because he'll absolutely say the wrong thing or make an inappropriate joke. He's, Yep, my show would be canceled real quick. But he could hold down the fort for a while and be very entertaining.
Dude, you should give him his own spinoff.
Dude. He had, and I actually encouraged him to do a show this once.
The Ray Ora show. Yep.
Ray had this thing for a while that he would just do privately amongst close friends who know him. But he had a character he created called, and a show that character did. He called it Racist Werewolf Reviews. And in this thing, now you got to understand, Ray is a very Asian dude. He's still you just look at Ray, he's a very Asian dude. And he had this thing called the Racist Werewolf Reviews, where he was a werewolf who was incredibly racist. And you mention any movie, he'll bring up something racial about the movie. And whenever he would say something racist, he would howl. So he goes, so that movie, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and oh my God. The stuff he would say had me rolling on the floor. I mean, it was racist against Asians, whites, blacks, Latino, everybody. I mean, he was just, because we know Ray, he would never do that in public though. But oh my God, he would have the audience in stitches, but then my show would be canceled pretty damn quick. All right. The Film Addict writes, "Hey John, I know this is a random question, but back in the 80s, do you think Andy Kaufman would have been a great Joker?" I don't do the should X actor have played X role. I don't do those. Great if he was alive. Off topic. What do you guys think of the Andy Kaufman biopic? We try to stay on topic here about comic book stuff. Listen. All that matters is that you get a good actor in a role. Just because Andy Kaufman was kind of like a real life Joker in a way doesn't necessarily mean he would have been the right guy, but Andy Kaufman was also a very talented dude. Right. But as far as X actor and X role, to me, as long as you put somebody talented in there, that's all that matters. What do you think about it, Rob? What do you think about Andy Kaufman as Joker?
He might have been a different take. Who's to say that he couldn't have done it? And I would have rather seen sort of Jim Carrey's take on the Joker, but maybe we got that with The Mask. But I did like Man in the Moon. And
as Riddler. We did get him as Riddler, too. Don't forget about that.
Yeah. I didn't like him as Riddler.
No, most people didn't. I mean, I think he was trying to make it work, and I think he was doing what they wanted him to do. But then you had Tommy Lee Jones, which is just trying to be the Riddler instead of being Two-Face, and just what a mess. What a mess. But it had its moments. It had some cute moments and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Mighty Tank 1 writes, "Love the MCU, but even I have to wonder if 4 movies, including Disney Plus, is too much. Might as well enjoy it while it lasts." Listen, Mighty Tank, you're not wrong. I'm not going to lie to you. Look, I'm the type of guy, give me all the comic book material you can. That said, we are heading into an era right now, Rob. An era where, put Disney Plus aside, an era where we have The Boys and Umbrella Academy and Doom Patrol and Titans and Flash and Arrow and Supergirl and Black Lightning. We have now we have all this new Disney Plus stuff coming. We're going to have She-Hulk, and we're going to have Ms. Marvel. We're going to have Moon Knight. We're going to have Falcon and Winter Soldier. We're going to have WandaVision and all the other new stuff. On top of that, we're going to have DC movies. On top of that, we now got Vin Diesel and his lad. We got other comic book kind of movies trying to get made. And on top of that, we're going to have 4 MCU movies alone per year. And on top of that, we've got Sony cranking out their movies. Listen, I'm not saying what will or will not happen, but I am saying, if there was ever going to be a time where we were going to have oversaturation, we are heading into that time. And again, please don't misquote me. If we're going to have oversaturation, and I think that's a huge if. I'm not saying we will. I'm saying if we're going to suffer from oversaturation, we are now heading into the time period. This is going to be the time period that does it. And I don't know that it will. I'm hoping that it won't. But if it's going to happen, this is the window, Rob, where it's going to happen. What do you think?
I think so, too. I mean, look, I love comic book movies, but eventually the paradigm for comic book movies will be over. You know, there's only so many stories you can tell with superheroes. I went through the same thing as a comic book reader. You know, I've read so many different kinds of comic books, but when it comes down to superheroes, I mean, that's why I loved Hickman's recent reboot of the X-Men. I thought it was, wow, I read X-Men for 30 years. I have 30 years of X-Men comics, and I just got burned out. I'm like, I have no desire to read another X-Men story until Hickman completely changed the status quo. And those 12 issues were pretty amazing. But I don't see how eventually we're just going to get tired of these stories. It just happens.
And then everything moves in cycles.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you get one type of movie for a long time, and then you get another type of movie. And like the Westerns came, they were everything, then they went away. They're starting to showing signs of maybe having resurgence.
You know,
rom-coms. I mean, everything moves in cycles. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All right. Just a couple more questions here, guys, and we're going to wrap it up for the day. Suthius writes, that interview is exactly okay. So you were referring to the interview I did with the Chris's. Okay. Now I was gonna say that I can't remember him saying that exact thing in the movie, but it reminds me of something he said in an interview. Okay. So that's exactly what we're talking about. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. And then we get the last one today comes to us from, where are we at? Vec L, who writes, dude, As a black man, I would pay top dollar to see your friend Ray do this racist bear show thing. The racist movie review, the racist werewolf review. Ray is not my friend, although I am friends with Ray. Ray is actually my brother-in-law. Ray, who, like this Mortis, you see that Robert and I are in, holding all the graphics in place and all the graphics in the show and the logo of the weekly. That's Ray. He does all the graphics on the show.
He's really talented.
He's super talented, and he is my wife's brother. He's Anne's brother, Anne's big brother, her kuya. And he's one of the most ridiculously, spontaneously funny people I have ever. We just recently took a trip to Canada in August. Anne and I went to go visit my family, and our friend Ryan and Ray came along with us because they hadn't been to Canada before. Well, Ray has come to Canada with us before, so he knew my parents already. So we take a day trip into Niagara Falls. My hometown of Hamilton, not that any of you care about this, but trust me, this was hilarious. My hometown of Hamilton, you can take the highway to Niagara Falls, or you can take these like back roads through the country, like through the pretty abandoned country. You can take it to get all the way to Niagara Falls and then take it back to the Campea Ranch, to the ranch where my family lives. And we're coming back from Niagara Falls, and it's pitch black, and we're driving through an area. There's not like on these dark one-lane highway roads through the country and stuff like that. And we come to an intersection, and there's this house that has clearly been there for about 80 years. No other houses around it, with one street light above it shining down. And Ray gets scared very easily. Just so you know, Ray gets real nervous, real scared, real fast about a lot of things. His catchphrase is, I'm fine. Like when something stressed, like he gets freaked out real easy. And so there's this old boarded up, paint peeled house just standing there all by itself in the middle of nowhere. And I say to Ray as we're driving, like, Ray, I'll give you $20 to stay the night in that house. It's $20? You have to give me life-changing money. I ain't going to go in there. Crack Pipe Jim is going to be in there. He's going to kill me. As how he came up with the name Crack Pipe Jim out of nowhere, I have no idea. And I just remember I almost drove off the road as he started just freaking out about the notion of staying the night in that house and talking about tales. And then the entire rest of the drive, the rest of the 40-minute drive home, with me, Anne, Ray, and Ryan in the car, was just him making up these legendary stories of Crack Pipe Jim. And he was just making up the guy who lives in the abandoned house. Guys, I got to see if I can get Ray to come on camera at some time, because I think you guys would love Ray. It's just, I know when I do, I'm running a 50-50 chance that I'm going to lose my show. But it is what it is. It is what it is. Have you ever you've met Ray, right? Rob?
Yeah, met Ray a ton of times, like in the studio when he would come in. You know,
that's right.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
I love Ray. We talk action figures.
That's, of course, that's right. He was working in the studio when we were at the studio. Yeah. All right, guys. That will do it for this week's installment of The Weekly Hero. This has been fun. Thank you for coming along and being part of the ride, guys. This has been a lot of fun. Don't forget, we'll be back again next week. And, of course, don't forget the John Campea Show returns tomorrow morning and Friday morning. Rob will be on Friday. Tomorrow, of course, on the John Campea Show is No Pants Thursday. It's me, Aaron Cummings, and Chris Carr. Make sure you guys join us for that. And in the meantime, Rob, where can people find you and your adventures online?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at RMBurnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnettwork, on YouTube, or the adjacent website, theburnettwork.net.
And guys, of course, you can follow me on all the social medias, simply just at John Campea. All right, guys, thanks to everybody for being here and making this a fun show to do, and for all of you who sent in the questions for two reasons. One, you gave us fun things to talk about, but also you supported the channel while we were doing it, and all of us here, thank you very much for that, guys. That'll do it for us. My name's John Campea, and until next time, everyone, bye-bye.